Hi Dragons! I am back to do my first official wrap-up for the month of January. I'm really excited. So this month I have been doing, sorry my dog is over here and you're gonna see her legs. I have been doing 4 paws and bookshelves and I am on this level, so I'm gonna go through every book that I have read, including my DNFs. I'm also going to do stats because I'm a stats girl. I use Covers with Cassidy. Okay, alright. Cassie, I would like to speak to the people. Okay. So I do Covers with Cassidy, her spreadsheet. So if you want her spreadsheet, you can go find it there. But I really do like her spreadsheet. It does all the math for me. I am not a super big math person, so anything that does it for me is super helpful. But I'm going to do stats first, and then I'm going to kind of dive in to the 8 books that I've read. And then if I can remember at the end, I'll talk about the books that I am like in the middle of reading. So right now I have read 8 books. I have DNF'd 1. So I have read 8 things. I have read 2,627 pages. Average page count a day is 84 pages. So that's pretty good for me. I normally try to read 100 pages a day between audiobook and physical book. My average page count was 328. My most read genre is mystery, which makes sense because I have been listening to a lot of mystery themed audiobooks. I go through phases in my listening and reading life, but definitely I'm in my mystery phase. I've read 3 books with wrap, 5 from authors I read before, and 3 books that I hauled, which is actually pretty good. I had 2 5-star, 0 4.5 star, 1 4-star, 3 3.5 star, and 1 3-star for an average rating of 3.44, which is really not that bad. Oh my goodness. Oh goodness. She is not gonna let me undo this. Okay. I had 2 5-stars, but I feel like, oh no, I just have 2 5-stars. Okay, that is correct. I was like, where was the other one? I read 3 new releases which came out in 2025. I read 2 backlists and 3 from last year. I read 2 physical books, 4 audio, 1 media, and 1 ebook. I started 0 series. I continued in 2, and I read 5 standalone and no anthologies, at least not this month. I don't really read anthologies unless if I feel obligated to. I read 1 middle grade, 3 young adult. Sorry, she's really not letting me do this. I think in 4 adult I read. Those are all the audiobooks I read. Oh my goodness, guys. And then I read 2 ARCs, 1 from Audible, 2 from the library, and 3 owned. I did sneak a underline. Kissy, stop. And then I read 1 nonfiction. I read 1 fantasy. I read 2 mystery, 1 manga or graphic novel, and 2 fantasy romance, and 1 romance. So we are gonna get into it once I take her snoot outside so she can go run around. But I will be back. I'm gonna put her in her little padlock, and then we're gonna get into the books. So yeah, those are my stats, and then we will talk about the 1 DBS. This whole month so far, I've been playing Paws and Bookshelves from Leandra from TBR Zeros. I will attach all my vlogs below. But yeah, so I have a superstition. My first book of the year has to be a 5-star. So that is what I did. So my first book of the month of the year actually was A Language of Dragons by S.F. Williamson. And I love this book. This book was perfect. This book was such a Laura book. Alright, I'm gonna go see what she wants, and then I'll come back and I'll give you guys all. So I got this book at Comic-Con. I got my ARC. I actually have my ARC hiding here somewhere. Where did I put it? So I was really excited for this book, and I'm actually so happy that I actually read it and made it my first book of the month, because I was severely disappointed in Iron Flame in 2024, and I just was not finding a book that kind of did it. But this book really mixed a lot of things that I liked. Had a romance, it had a war-esque setting, set kind of with like dragons, but like with spycraft. So basically in the society, the enemy are dragons, and they need people that could speak dragons that kind of act as translators to know what the dragons are doing. And all of these people that are involved in this program have been committed some crime. So they're kind of using these people to kind of excuse their deaths. And our main character, Vivian, is one of those people that her parents were part of the rebel movement. And her cousin kind of gets infiltrated into this this spy craft, like, I think it's like Beckley Park. And she's kind of using that to be like a code breaker for dragon language. And it was fascinating. I love this book. I think for me it worked so well because there was a lot of different elements that hit right. I thought it was so interesting, like, to talk about culture in the story. I also really did like the dragons in the story. I also did like all the mystery elements. And I flew through this book. Honestly, I probably would have read more if I like read it early. Like if I read when I had more days off. But I just loved it. I think that it really hit. It worked so well with the characters. And I really hope we get a sequel. There was also some elements of this book that had like mixed media elements, like the news and stuff like that. But I really liked our main characters. We had a romance. We also had a lot of dragon content, and it really was a very like unique historical fantasy that really touched on issues, and I had a fun time and I gave it 5 stars. It was my first physical read of the month, so I gave the book 5 stars. Then my first official read of the month was my Taylor Swift book, which was a nonfiction, and it was Heartbreak is a Natural Anthem, the new how Taylor Swift revitalized the pop music industry. I'll attach a photo here. I will be honest, 2024 was not my year for nonfiction, but I really want to make a comeback, so I decided to pick this book up. It was fun. I am a Taylor Swift fan, and I honestly like this book. I don't think it was anything groundbreaking, but I had a fun time with it. I'm a relatively new Swiftie, so I like the background. I like the history, but it didn't like blow my mind, if that makes sense. Like, it was fun. It was interesting. It was a quick read. I read it in like a couple of days when I was heading back to work, but it was a fun read. I just don't think it like blew me away. I don't think it was anything new, but I did like it, and I don't really rate nonfiction, but it was a fun read. Would I recommend it? Yeah. And then this book that I just chatted about was for an odd number of pages. And then my next one was One Person on the Cover, which was for Taylor Swift autobiography. So, the book. And then the next book that I read was for the title Winter Setting, and I read On Thin Icing by Ellie Alexander. I will attach a photo here. This is the third book in the Meet Your Bake Shop mystery series. This had a very, very wintry setting. It was set in December at a snow resort, and basically they go to this snow resort and a murder happens. It's a cozy mystery series set around a bake shop. This one did not take place in the small town, so I think I liked it a little bit less. I only gave this book 3.5 stars, but they're really, really fun. I would say if you're kind of caught up on Joanne Fuca and you want a bit of like a more modern day series, I do like this one. It's quick, they're fun, and they're really, really quick listens. I definitely want to make this a priority for catching up on this series in 2025. So yeah, but I had a fun time. Very, 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 very wintry. So if you're looking for a wintry cozy, I would read them. You don't have to read them in order, but there is like plot points that kind of continue. So, and that was for a wintry setting. And then the next book that I read was I think this one was for less than I read this for something. I don't remember what I read this for. I think I just picked this up for something, and I'm not sure what I actually read it for. But I read The Firelight Apprentice by Pri Paulson. I will attach a photo here. This is the same author that wrote Garlic the Witch and Garlic and the Vampire, and I had a fun time with this book. I don't think it's really, really memorable. I love those two books, and this one was just okay, but it basically follows this girl as she's kind of going into her magic, and she has to kind of go away from her sister to kind of like solve her magic issues, and it was okay. I don't think the story was super memorable like Garlic and the Witch and Garlic and the Vampire. She's outside. Sorry. So I like this book. I only gave it 3 stars, and I honestly read it because I did like the author in the past, but also because it was on my Libby and I could get it for relatively free. So I only gave this book 3 stars. I don't think it's going to be memorable or not that memorable, but I still really do recommend her other series, and I'm happy that I picked it up when I saw it on my Libby. So the next book I read for under 300 pages was the next book in the Bake Shop Mystery series. I think it is called, what is it called? Oh dear, I don't remember the title of it. It's called Caught Red-Handed by Ellie Alexander. I'll attach a photo here. And this was another book that just was fun. It was set in January. It also was set in the small town. So this one had to do with a new business that was coming into town that wasn't going by the beautification standards in Oregon. And it led to a murder, and our main character, our main sleuth, had to try to figure it out. I thought it was fun. I like this one a little bit better because it was set in the small town. I think the story was harder to predict than the first one that I read, but I had a fun time with it, and I gave it 3.75 stars. And the next book that I read was a debut book for this. And again, if you want more about all the challenges, I would go to Leander's video. But I read Brewed with Love by Shelley Page for a debut book. And I have to admit, I had a fun time with this book. I sometimes need... This book read more like a paranormal cozy mystery. And I think kind of what I learned last year is I'm a little bit strict about what I like to listen to versus what I like to physically read. Normally I try to read a lot of fantasy and I try to listen to a lot of mystery and romance. This was definitely a romance mystery mix, so I feel like for me, the pacing wise, I think I probably should have listened to this book. But I had an arc and I read it pretty quickly. Basically, you have a main character named Sage who is kind of forced to work with her old crush. It is YA because, you know, her grandmother needed help at the shop, and she's definitely nursing a broken heart. She's kind of doing a tonic to like get rid of heartbreak because she's in this apothecary shop, and then the ingredients get stolen, and someone in her town, the ingredients are used against her, and she loses her memory for good. So to avoid the elders kind of shutting down her apothecary, she has to work with her old crush to figure out who took her tonic. And it was fun. LGBTQ plus rep, it was a sapphic romance. Took place in a small town. I would say this is more paranormal, cozy, but I had a fun time with it. I gave it like 3.5, like maybe rounded up to 4 on Goodreads. I had a fun time with it. I just don't think the story captured me as much as I was hoping for a cozy romantasy, and it read more like a contemporary with a dash of magic. And then the next book that I read for blue cover is Otherworldly by F.T. Lukens. This was a book that was on my 25, like one of my lists for the year. This was her 2024 book, and I have to admit, I didn't love this book as much. I think that like I struggled a little bit to feel connected to the characters, but basically you have a main character who's a non-believer. She is kind of stuck in a perpetual winter, and her character is like a, oh god, what is it? He's a magical assistant. He is basically like a bean. He kind of helps this witch, but when the witch dies and he kind of steals something, he has to go on an adventure to kind of protect himself, and he winds up getting worked up with Ellery. And it was a sapphic, like it was like an LGBTQ plus romance. They use they them pronouns. The whole story just felt a little bit disconnected to me, and I didn't feel like I connected to any of the characters, and I don't think I like this one as much as their previous books because I have really liked their other books quite a bit. So I only gave this book like 2 stars, and I think that it was a bit of a miss for me. I did mixed media read this, and I think that it just was not as much as a hit. Before I finished this, I also did try to read my book from my bookish advent, so For the Wolf, and I wound up DNFing it. I just wasn't in the mood for it, and I don't know, it just felt a little bit boring to me, so I didn't wind up picking the rest of it up. I wound up DNFing it. And then the next book that I read, let me look at my little thing, is a genre blend that was Erisa Buy or Borrow, because Erisa Buy or Borrow was the prompt I landed on, but I wanted to catch all the puppies. So on the board, I read All the Missing Pieces by Catherine Cowles, and I gave this book 5 stars. I really love this book. This is Chaos and Lawman's book. So this is I always thought it was in the Tattered and Torn series, but I actually think it's a standalone. So I have been reading Catherine Cowles for a while. I have read most of her series. I'm up to date. I really have to go back and read like 2 more series by her. I have never read a book by her that felt like Hate to More like this. And I love this book. I even bought a finished copy from Novel Grounds. And this is you go to Shady Cove and you follow our main character. Oh god, now I can't remember what the character's name is. Ridley, and she is a true crime podcaster. She's gonna go to this small town and kind of solve this case, or help solve this case, because it's eerily similar to her sister's disappearance when she was younger. Her sister disappeared on the graduation from college or high school, I think, I can't remember which one, and she has never given up on hope. And she's found a case that has similar, you know, like marks, and this lady is still alive. So she goes to this town to kind of do her podcast season, and the girl's brother, like the girl that is kept alive and was found, her brother is the sheriff, and he's not pleased to have her. This is the first book by Catherine Cowles that I felt was true Hate to More. Like, still 50% into this book, like, we felt like, oh, they don't like each other. And I like that. I think that this story had a lot of heart to it. I also loved all the characters that we met. So even though it's a standalone, this is her first books by Sourcebooks Casablanca, so I'm really hoping they let her expand this series, because I had such a fun time with this, and I gave this book 5 stars. And then the next book that I read was, let me make sure that I'm on my right thing. Yeah, and then that's all the books that I read. I'm currently in the middle of reading 2 things. So I'm in the middle of rereading Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, and I'm also in the middle of reading House of Bane and Blood by Exos Elmenard. This is for some secret projects that I'm doing, so I don't want to go too deep into that. But let me know in the comments, what have you read in the month of January? I have definitely been doing well on doing all of my like challenges, which I'm really excited for. I have been physically reading a lot of fantasy and audiobooking a lot. Let me know in the comments what are some books you read in the first half of the month. And if I had to choose my top favorites of this month so far, that is really, really easy. I would say Language of Dragons is my favorite fantasy that I read. And my favorite romance is All the Missing Pieces. So let me know in the comments what you are thinking and what are your top books of the month so far. I would love to know. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.